Hey everybody, welcome. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who are making the world a better place, whether it be locally, globally, or digitally. And today we have got a couple of special pieces of this. First of all, I'm going to hand things over to our president, Angelica. President Angelica, Dr. Murata in Italy, will tell us a little bit about a special focus our club has this year. Angelica.
Thank you, Rushton, and welcome everybody, and welcome to our speaker, Michael. So I'm very, very excited today to be here and have the opportunity to listen to our very first topic of telemedicine, because you know that this year we are going to focus on healthcare, and in particular on how technology can better serve our communities. And healthcare is definitely one of the most challenging issues nowadays. After the COVID pandemic, this has been a challenging problem for everyone in the world. Actually, this has always been a problem, but this is also something that we want to contribute to. And we are going to focus on this topic this year. And we are going to have a series of talks regarding this topic, where we will have expert professionals in this field. And stay tuned for more in the future. But for now, let's focus on Michael's presentation, and I'm looking forward to listen more to your interest and your topic. Thank you so much.
All right, Michael, before we launch there, let me tell our viewers that our format today might be slightly different. So as we leap into this and you get to hear about global offsite care, know that that we may be spending a little less time on the Q&A than we normally do, but we are excited to get the update on the work being done. Michael, we hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. This is my second time to present to this club. I'm excited to bring you news of how we've evolved since our first presentation. For one, our founding medical director, Dr. Gude, has since stepped back from being involved with global offsite care, although he's in active practice doing telemedicine around the US. We've got a new medical director who's on the faculty at Western University for Health Sciences, which is a collection really of 9 healthcare colleges. And his job is to teach telemedicine to medical students as they're coming up. And he's excited about being involved because global offsite care has kind of 2 main areas of emphasis now. We do continuing medical education, which is right up Dr. Pecchia's alley, that's his name. And we also try to patch together smaller healthcare clinics or facilities with larger, more resource-rich institutions in the same country to strengthen and expand really the effective reach of the major hospitals through supporting general practitioners that generally staff the smaller healthcare centers. And we have an example, a recent example to share with you today about a project that was just launched 2 weeks ago in Tanzania. So I'm going to go kind of in depth on that one rather than expand on projects we have elsewhere. We'd love to talk to you about Nepal and the Philippines and other places where we operate, but this one is particularly exciting, I think, and we have some video to share that will communicate more about what we're doing on that front. So again, we do what we call global grand rounds. We have an international audience and share medical topics once a month now. We do an hour-long session, and it's educational, it's accredited so that doctors or other healthcare professionals who attend can get continuing medical education units, which helps maintain their license. So that's one whole arena that we do, and there's a page on our website about the most recent topics. Some of them are presented by our projects in Africa or Asia, and some of them by professors here in the US that are in medical schools or otherwise senior in their field. So the other main avenue of support that we provide for telemedicine worldwide and is to pair off institutions, as we mentioned. But first, let me clarify, telemedicine is a big word, covers a lot of activities. So for some people, telemedicine means, hey, I call my doctor, he prescribes something that I need for a condition that I can talk to him about, or maybe have a video chat. It's also called telehealth by some. And direct doctor to patient interaction is not something we can do internationally because of licensing. You know, the people where the patient lives want to control who gets to be a doctor and their authority. So we always work through locally licensed doctors, and we act more as a resource, a second pair of eyes. And those second pair of eyes can be within the same country, which is our emphasis now, or in other countries. So we bring people together through the global grand rounds. They get to know each other a little bit, and they can reach out to each other to handle difficult cases, or in cases where the patient's not responding as they'd hoped. Let me share a little bit about the Tanzania project. And first I'll share some slides that we have.
Michael, as you're sharing, make sure you click those boxes that say optimize for video as well.
I'll do that. Okay, so the first bit is here, and let me see if we can avoid losing you guys. Let's see. I might have to new share on this. Yeah, let's do it this way. Great. Okay. So this is mostly a bunch of pictures that'll give you some idea of this project. Well, first of all, Tanzania is in East Africa, and the two locations where the project is hosted is one is in a city called Mwanza, and they're both locations are on Lake Victoria, but Mwanza is, I think, the third largest city in Tanzania and has about 1 million inhabitants. And that's where a major hospital is located called Bugando Medical Center. So when our team traveled there to begin this project and launch it, then they went to Mwanza first, and they conducted a review of the facility, what's been set up. And then the next day they had a training session, and they brought together the medical people and others from the remote hospital, which is in a town called Shirati. And to give you an idea, Shirati is about 300 miles away. So it's a trip to get into the big city where the major medical center is. And one of the objectives there is to reduce the number of occasions when patients have to make that trip. But for training, the people in Shirati got up really early and took the 5-hour journey on basically a dirt road. For those of us in California, it's about the distance between the Bay Area and Redding. So it's not a trip you would undertake lightly, especially without any highways. So they traveled in for this training. We conducted some hands-on familiarization with equipment that we brought. Mostly it's digital medical equipment and something we call a Gude, which is a stand really for an iPad, but it's kind of like a mini robot in that it can be remotely maneuvered a little bit. And that's what I want to show you in the video that we'll take a look at. So on Wednesday, there's a public event and some show and tell about the equipment that we brought. And all the divisions of the hospital in Mwanza were brought together for exposure to the existence of this project, and people from Sharati also were there. So that was kind of publicized, and it's a great chance for the community to also find out that this project's being added to their community. So then on Thursday, our people decamped from Mwanza and took this trip to Sharati, and they had a few challenges and logistical challenges along the way, but they made it about evening time there, and then did their preliminary visit of the Sharati facility to get a better handle on how things were going to be done. And then Friday, they did a demonstration of how to use the equipment that we had provided, which was one Gude and also a handheld ultrasound probe. We discovered on getting there that the handheld ultrasound probe we brought was going to be augmented by some more that had been brought by a Swiss doctor that had been living there in Sharati for a while, for several months, training them on this ultrasound probe. So that was a bit of serendipity. And that event was televised, and people from elsewhere in Tanzania and also from Uganda, and we had invited people from Rwanda, but they didn't make it. But it's a great opportunity for people with other facilities to take a look at what we were doing and what was being set up there, and to see if it was interesting for them. So this is a team arriving. The taller doctor in that image is Dr. Akrabi, and he's the leader of the project in Bugando Medical Center, and that's the building behind there. And the woman you see here is Princess Dr. Kamala, who is from Nigeria, and she's also someone who's had a lot of experience with our telemedicine program, having brought her hospital on board in 2013. And then since then, she's retired, but she's also promoting telemedicine projects as a Rotarian. So she's a double threat here. And the woman on the right is Ganche Anga. She's our administrative manager. So her role is to set up new projects and get them lined up so prepared for this launch. And she spent a year of her time meeting with these people and getting them prepared. And on the left, the gentleman there is a technical expert that has helped in many of our launches in Africa. He's the IT manager for a major hospital in Nigeria, in Yenagoa, in the southern part of Nigeria. So that's a familiar composition for Rotarians, right? We have these lineups. This is an image of the equipment that we had provided. And here they are setting up. And there was a fellowship dinner that night. I haven't incorporated the images from that yet. But here's the training, and this is Dr. Akrabi at the front of the room, and he's got, we had about 30 people being trained, some of them from Sharati and some from around Bugando Medical Center. And here is Ayolu Tella, is the gentleman I mentioned from Nigeria who's expert in setting up this equipment. And just kind of walking them through, it's any individual piece of equipment's not hard, but it's just unfamiliar. So he makes sure that everything is working. And here we're doing some of the training. You can see the large screen has an image that's really coming from a Kubi that they have set up as well. So the Kubi is something that allows a remote doctor not present in the room to control it. And you can see on the left of that large screen, there's the quadrangle that shows how you can control a Kubi. So it's a real simple application, but requires being set up and making sure it actually works. So that's great. And this is an image from an otoscope. You can see this is something that can be shared. So that's the idea, is that you use a digital tool. It puts up a digital image. You can share that screen with any doctor on a video chat. Just a different tool. This is a dermatoscope image. You can see it in the lower part of the picture. And here's a pediatrician using the remote connection with the pediatrics ward in Bugando. So there's they are present with the patient, and you can see the Kubi in the foreground a bit that allows doctors in a different part of the hospital, in this case, to view the patient and to interact. So it's got an audio enhancement that lets them be heard, because otherwise the iPad would be too faint. There's my august self on the screen, so we had a chance to share what the project is all about. Dr. Akrabi standing there. So I'm going to flip through these fairly quickly here because I want to keep some time available for that video that's coming up. So this is a formal handover of the equipment. It's a milestone in global grants, but this is not a global grant, by the way. It's club to club and augmented by funds raised by Global Offsite Care. And the grand finale out of this. So let's switch, because I think you're going to enjoy seeing this video. So I'm going to share, make sure it's still checked, and that's great. Okay, are we hearing anything?
Yeah, welcome.
Here we go.
I'm Dr. Ali Akrabi, emergency physician with 5 years experience from Bugando, but also a fellow of critical care from Cardiff University. So I welcome you. What do you have here?
So the opening shot here is from the hospital that's 300 miles away. That's he also mentioned Catholic University as part of their institution, so it's a teaching hospital. So when he says, what do we have here? He's talking about a patient that had just come out of the ICU. in Sharati, which is a smaller facility. And those are the other people you can see.
Yeah, Dr. Ali, welcome. We are in an intensive care unit in Sharati Hospital. We have a 40 years old lady who was admitted in a hospital on 20th. She came with she had a normal SVD she had a 5.2 kg baby. And then.
So if you're like me, you might not be totally clear on what the doctor is saying. But the patient is there lying on the hospital bed, and we've blurred her face so you can't see her. And you can kind of hear that annoying beeping sound, right? That's not somebody's cell phone. It's the bedside monitor. This is an ICU. So it's signaling something needs attention.
She was planned for family planning where she was supposed to undergo BTL. But unfortunately, when we were preparing for her, she started to have a tender abdomen with saturating pulse were going high, the blood pressure dropping. So we suspected that she has an internal hemorrhage, and then we refer her for an investigation, and then we came up with a ruptured uterus. So yesterday she was taken to operation room. So she's at 24 hours post.
So to fill you in, this is a patient that had had an operation earlier that day. And you can see that the field of vision has shifted, so you can see the bedside monitor. And there's a flashing red indicator on that bedside monitor indicating that her oxygen saturation is below a threshold that triggers that alarm.
Subtotal hysterectomy due to a ruptured uterus where she had a normal SVD, but at the end of the day, she had a rupture. So you can see her in the bed. And then the vitals, you can see the monitor because I'm able to see the monitors.
So, maybe you focus on, okay. So what I see on the monitor, I'm trying to focus. There's a red alert there. Is it that's the pulse oxygen saturation?
And the saturation.
So the patient is having hypoxia right now, or he has cold extremities on the hands. That is peaking not clearly. I can see the wave on the monitor.
Cold. That, hope that is the cause why we are seeing a low saturation, because also she's having coldness of the extremities, the peripheral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the case. To echo you, 40-year-old female admitted 3 days ago and delivered by SVD, a 5.2 kg baby. But
yes.
Then she's planned for BTL. She developed a ruptured uterus. Laparotomy done 24 hours ago and found a ruptured uterus. Repaired, and now how is the patient today?
Today she's fine, she's doing fine. She has just ablated, and then no abdomen is soft, non-tender, non-distension. The bowels sound very audible, and then the chest is clear. She's doing fine. She has done a passive ambulation in the morning, and then she has started the SIPS.
The blood pressure, may I focus on the blood pressure? Can you focus on the blood pressure?
Blood pressure is 114 over 57.
Yeah. Okay. How?
I think I'll interrupt here. Is spoiler alert. I mean, they did provide oxygen, and that brought up the oxygen saturation, and that beeping sound went away as a result. Got her over that minimum threshold you want to see with a patient. So this illustrates how a senior doctor at a remote location can assist the staff, and at the end he summarized that the patient didn't need to be transported to Bugando Medical Center, and that they had everything in hand at Rotary. So that was a good sign. And it was not something that was intended to be part of the project launch there, but it was an opportunity that we couldn't pass up because somebody needed attention and they were there. I'm going to stop sharing at this stage. I have another project I could show you, but how are we doing on time? Question.
Well, we're about 26, 27 minutes into it, I think, at this point.
And does that mean I have 10 more minutes? 2 more minutes?
How about we do this? Can you summarize the other project, and then if that leads to questions, then we can pick that up in the Q&A.
Okay. Yes. So the other project, when it came to us because somebody here in the U.S. who is Nepalese, but is now resident here and a graduate of Sonoma State University, who's not far from us, and got acquainted with our project while a student there and a member of Rotary. Has family back in Nepal, and they live in a remote village, or relatively remote. It's several hours outside of Kathmandu. And so he identified there was a hospital there that he thought would benefit from a telemedicine project, and contacted a Rotary club out of Kathmandu to sponsor the project. So that came together in a relatively short amount of time for us, because he was traveling to Nepal for a family occasion and had the opportunity to bring some stuff with him. So we provided a handheld ultrasound probe, which he took with him to Nepal, and they got started that way. And it kind of compressed the whole setup mode that we do, but we have a memorandum of understanding that spells out what the hospital will do and what the Rotary Club, in this case a Rotary Club, will do, and what Global Offsite Care does, and lays out, how do they anticipate this ultrasound probe will help them. So they kind of have some ideas about, yeah, we can use this tool in specific circumstances, and we'll be checking up later to see how is it working and is it benefiting their patients, because we're all interested in projects that make a difference and improve patient outcomes. So in this case, so that's our goal there, and they're under process right now. They've just transferred the equipment, and we're laying that foundation for follow-up and monitoring with the Rotary Club.
All right. Well, great. Well, what we'll do is we'll take a minute to introduce the group that we have on the recording. So once you hear your name, just go ahead and wave at the camera. That'll be great. So we have guest of the club, Aggie Freeman, who has done all kinds of good and important things with the district with regards to healthcare. Our president, Angelica, in Italy, member Carrie Lai here in California. Our one of our favorite Canadians, Chris Cochran, who happens to be in Virginia at the moment. A friend of the club and hopefully member on the way, Lisa Axelrod here in California. Member Phil Dean here in California. In Texas, member Rory Olson here in California, member Sandy Stabile, and member Shags Shagrin. My name is Rushton. We're excited to be able to share stories like this powerful experience that Global Offsite Care has described for what's happening in Tanzania. And I'll hand it over to Angelica for our first question.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for this great presentation. And clearly, the power of telemedicine is something that we need to take into account for the future. And personally, I love the concept of telemedicine because as a cybersecurity professional, I like the combination of medical and technical capabilities for this. So, I believe in the progress of technology in the healthcare field, but I think that despite the progress of technology and all the capabilities, there are many misconceptions about that in currently. So I wanted to ask you, what are the main misconceptions in your opinion? How can we overcome them to make people accept that?
Good question. Well, I think a silver lining of the recent pandemic is that a lot of people who had before would have traveled in to their doctor to see him face to face didn't feel safe doing that. And the doctor, him or herself, didn't feel safe having them, a parade of people, any one of whom might be contagious with this disease, come to their office. So it highlighted the physician safety. And I think people in a lot of locations got more used to that idea that part of your healthcare can just be phone calls or video chats, particularly in the developed world. But I think a misconception anywhere really is that some remote doctor can replace or displace a physician that you would see face to face. There more tend to be resources than your primary care physician. And I think that's a way to look at telemedicine. It's a part of the picture. It augments what physicians were able to do previously, but doesn't remove the benefit of face-to-face medicine, because it's tremendous. Face-to-face meetings are a different animal than Zoom meetings, but Zoom is better than no meeting at all. And so that's, I think, one of the major misconceptions is that everything could be on Zoom, but it's just not true.
I'll combine two questions that came in from the chat. One is from a member of the UC Merced Rotaract Club, or the Rotaract liaison for the UC Merced Rotaract Club. What are the opportunities for international service projects for different clubs? And an associated question, is there also funding needed for medical supplies?
Well, I'll answer a brief answer to the second question is yes, we need money for equipment. That's about half of what we spend money on. The rest is on travel, so that we can launch these projects. The Tanzania is the first face-to-face launch in the last 2 years due to the pandemic limiting the safety before, but we're back now. Remind me of the first part.
So the first part is about international service projects and perhaps a direction there actually in terms of how to get in touch with you about such projects, assuming there are possibilities. If they go to your site at globaloffsitecare.org, is that one of the ways to get in touch with you and Dr. Gude and with the team in order to be able to learn these things?
Yes, yeah, the website's a good place to start, but also my email is michael.cook@globaloffsitecare.org. So email to us would be fine. And yes, we have lots of opportunities for international service. And in fact, I think the Nepal project we were just talking about is an example where somebody here had a connection in another country where they were interested in a telemedicine project and traveled to that country to help get this thing launched. And to share with people that he knew in Nepal, besides family, through Rotary. Dozens of clubs have participated in telemedicine projects, mostly financially, I think, but also in identifying resources that we can use. A recent example is the Ukraine, of course, is in the middle of a war, and medical support is an important activity now of Rotary in Ukraine. And the International Rotary Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals is an action group under Rotary International, and they contacted us to say, well, we know you're Rotary centric, and do you see a role for telemedicine in the relief effort in Ukraine? And so we're running down that path and trying to link up with people staffing mobile clinics that are being put together under a Rotary emergency grant. And we hope to have telemedicine operating in Ukraine to augment their capabilities.
So next question, and perhaps the last one before we stop the recording, although those of you who are part of the recording today, we'll pick up the questions from there once we've finished the recording. However, when you look at you mentioned, for example, that there was like a 5-hour trip on a dirt road from, I think, between Shirati and Mwanza, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
You know, in one respect, that seems to show that one of the key pieces for the need for telemedicine is this issue of just distance, right, and transportation. But you also mentioned the safety of the medical professionals with regard to the particular needs of the patients. And then one can also assume that there might be some limited amount of expertise that just can't get to every clinic in an area. In the work that you have done, has one of these three factors kind of stood out like heads and tails above the others, or are they all, the kinds of things that become important just depending on your situation?
Well, I think we have tales and stories of mostly it's kind of augmenting the expertise by having a senior physician, where we have the most dramatic instances where the telemedicine is useful. We had a case where someone became ill in Haiti and actually was transferred to a hospital in New York, but they had problems with breathing, and Dr. Gude's a pulmonologist, so that's kind of his wheelhouse. And so through connections, they got Dr. Gude in touch with the team that was looking after this woman, and that team had determined that it would be a good idea to do a lung transplant to help resolve the problem that she was having. But Dr. Gude reviewed what they were doing with medication and other things and said, really, there's no need for a transplant because what you're doing is going to work. You just need to give it a couple more days. And so they backed off of undertaking what is a painful and risky procedure. And they were able to discharge that patient about 3 days later, and she could return to Haiti. So that was a case where the team had come to one conclusion, but someone else with more in-depth expertise could give them a new perspective on what they ought to be doing.
Very powerful. I'll wind things down before we hand it back to you, Michael, for the last word. I do want to add for our viewers that Michael offered to connect with you via email. And Michael, when it comes back, spell out your name as well with the email address so that people can contact you properly. But all of you who've been watching this as a recording, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you'll let us know you were here. There is an attendance form just a little farther down. The Silicon Valley Rotary .com page, as well as a discussion forum where you can share your thoughts and respond to others' thoughts on this program and other aspects of the meeting. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word, and that is to Mikel Cook, MIKEL.COOK at globaloffsitecare.org. Michael, go ahead and give us our last word.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for this opportunity to present. We're excited that there's new developments that are just hot off the press that we could share. And I hope that the eClub will get involved in some of our projects as they have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week.